welcome to Operationally Speaking. I'm your host, Tina DiMarino. We're excited today to talk with DNV Healthcare about their accreditation services and what they bring to ambulatory surgery centers. I'm going to take a moment and introduce all of our speakers. So first we have Crystal Green. She is the Ambulatory Surgical Sales Manager with DNV Healthcare. Crystal brings over a decade of experience partnering with healthcare organizations to advance patient safety, quality, and performance through accreditation and ISO-driven improvement, along with unique leadership experience at the intersection of healthcare, energy, and equity. She also serves as co-chair of the DNV Black Employee Network, where she is deeply committed to mentorship and developing future talent aligned with DNV's mission. So welcome, Crystal. Thank you for being here. I'd also like to introduce Michelle Colson. She is the manager of Ambulatory Surgical Center Accreditation at DNV Healthcare. Michelle has been with DNV since September of 2016. She remains active as a clinical and generalist surveyor, team lead, system team lead, and with over 3 decades in healthcare leadership and quality improvement, Michelle has always been passionate about patient safety and quality of care. So thank you, Michelle, for joining us today. Lovely to have you. And finally, we have Samantha Smith. She is the ASC Sales Manager at DNV Healthcare and a trusted partner to ambulatory surgery center leaders, navigating accreditation, quality, and operational excellence. With over a decade of client-facing sales experience, working alongside C-suite and executive decision makers, she is recognized for her ability to navigate complex environments, resolve challenges, and align quality improvement strategies with real-world operations. Additionally, being a mom, she has reinforced her belief that you can't simply check a box and expect a stable, reliable environment to follow. She understands true stability and is built around consistency, trust, clear systems that are lived and reinforced every day. That's for sure, right? Welcome, Samantha. Thank you for being here today. So I'm excited to learn more about DNV. I know in February you all attained your deemed status accreditation for being able to do deemed status surveys through Medicare for ambulatory surgery centers. So congratulations for that. I think that you are bringing an interesting perspective on accreditations that we're going to learn about today. So without further ado, I have prepared a list of questions to kind of go over with you so our listenership can understand more about DNV Healthcare and what your approach sets you apart with your accreditation. So what do you say would typically prompt an ASC to reconsider their current accreditation partner and start looking at DNV?
Tina, I'll take a stab at that one. From what I've seen, ASCs are usually begin reconsidering their accreditation partner when it starts to feel episodic rather than supportive. Leaders tell us that it feels like a high-stress event every few years instead of something that they feel is really helping them operate better every day. Another common catalyst is change. It could be growth, adding service lines, expanding locations, or experiencing leadership turnover. And in those moments, the leaders start asking whether their model is truly helping them stay aligned, consistent, and resilient. Now, in the past, in the ASC market, the accreditors have been fairly similar. So now the time for folks to start evaluating has become a bit heightened because we're the first ones that offer a new model. We usually come into the conversation because we're CMS approved and that we're the only accreditor that fully integrates ISO 9001 into our healthcare accreditation.
Well, thank you. Awesome. And I'm really excited to learn about ISO 9001. How does that integration change the way ASCs can think about accreditation?
Well, ISO, first of all, it's a globally recognized quality management standard that's used around the world. And it focuses on continual improvement across high-risk industries because it emphasizes leadership accountability, standardized processes, And when it's integrated into accreditation, as we've done at DNV, ASCs will begin to see that ISO 9001 fundamentally will reframe accreditation as being a management system rather than a checklist. So instead of focusing on whether a policy exists, ISO will look at how processes are designed, how leaders are involved, and how risks are managed, and how improvement happens over time. So accreditation moves from being event-based to system-based. Instead of focusing on one survey moment, ASCs can start thinking in terms of consistency, risk awareness, and continual improvement across the whole year. And it's a framework, so it gives leaders a process to connect quality, operations, and strategy.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know would you mind speaking for a minute on how long DNB has actually been in existence? Because I know your ISO 9001 has really supported other industries over many, many years. Would you mind
Sure.
talking about that for a second? Yeah.
DNV is, we're about 165 years old. And a lot of people have never heard of DNV. So we work in a multitude of industries. They're all high risk. We got our start in maritime. And the one story we do like to tell is that we tell people to think of a ship 165 years ago, Titanic. DNV actually declined certification of the Titanic for some of the same reasons. The ship had some issues. We did, however, certify the Carpathia, which was the rescue ship for the Titanic. From there, we broadened into other industries, oil and gas. We work with aerospace. We work with military, food and beverage, and all down to healthcare, which is our most recent entry for the market. And healthcare, surprisingly, as high risk as it is one of the last industries to start using ISO. But every healthcare organization that is DNV accredited is ISO certified.
Yeah, that's really wild, that 165 years old and that story with the Titanic. So thank you for sharing that. I know I was very interested after hearing one of your associates at DNV Healthcare talk about that whole ISO process, and it really was intriguing to me how well quality is kind of woven into everything that you do. So I appreciate you sharing that information. I know when the listenership may hear ISO 9001, they're really going to, wonder, what that is, and taking your company all the way back to 165 years ago speaks volumes about your knowledge and how you pull forth the accreditation perspective. So I have another question. So with annual surveys, that is one difference that is notable from DNV to the other accrediting organizations, and sometimes may cause, that initial apprehensive thought process, like, oh goodness, I'm going to have a survey every year. Could you tell us how that model actually supports the operations for an ASC instead of disrupting them?
Of course, Tina. I can actually answer that question for you. A lot of times when I talk to ASC leaders, the first question that I ask them when I hear that concern is think about how many events actually happen in your center in a year. But now think how many actually happen within 3. So what we're trying to do is provide an approach that's proactive versus reactive. So your traditional models, your 3-year models, or even your models that you periodically check in, what they do is they drive periodic performance instead. So now what you're doing is you're ramping up before, you're showing compliance during, but then you're drifting back to that variation again. And variation is actually what causes disruptions, right? It doesn't support your operations. So what does support operations is that consistency piece. And annual surveys actually help you create that. A variation does not support operations, but what does is consistency. And our NIAHO standards are integrated with ISO 9001, which we were just talking about, which is a quality management system. And our standards are also guaranteeing your compliance with CMS as well. So our standards and coming every year are actually helping us uncover those variations sooner. So what that does is it creates an environment of reliability for your staff and for your patients. So now instead of being reactive, you're actually becoming more predictive in regards to your safety, because you actually have systems in place that are clearly defined and align with your mission, vision, and values.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I know being in the industry for as long as we have and working with so many different surgery centers, we get called in at various points, from an operational perspective. And so it sounds like DNV would take away that mad dash scramble 6 months before or a year before accreditation, where everybody's worried and wanting to ensure that they've not missed anything, where it sounds to me like with this process you would always be in a state of readiness, because you're being examined and having that in the forefront of your mind every year as you move through your accreditation cycles. That fair
exactly
enough? Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that could be considered a positive. From your perspective, what's one operational or cultural benefit ASCs gain when they fully engage with this DNV model?
So, Tina, that's a really good question. And so the DNV model and approach to accreditation contributes to sustainable advances in quality and safety of care. So Sam mentioned being proactive instead of reactive, and that's exactly what our model supports. We think that accreditation should be an uplifting and empowering experience. I know that sounds strange, right? An uplifting experience for your accreditation survey, but that's truly what we believe, and our model embraces that. Our approach changes the paradigm from faults and punishments to opportunities and success. And we think that quality is everybody's job, and the DNV accreditation model is an investment in improving, not just a cost of doing business.
Thank you. Thank you for that. No, I hear you when you think accreditation. Uplifting is typically not the first word that may come to mind, but I mean, wow, if it could be that would be amazing, just to have everything really running on that proactive phase. I know from a leadership perspective, that's how we manage our centers. We always come from a position of being proactive, looking at processes and things like that. So thank you for sharing that, Michelle. That is a great, sounds like a great way to approach accreditation and the relationship between DNV and the ASCs. So thank you. For an ASC focused on growth or standardization, why does DNV's approach matter long term?
So we've talked a little bit about what makes us different, right? Why the need for another accrediting organization in the ASC space? DNV has really helped. We have been operating in the healthcare space since 2008. And we have really helped set the standard for quality as a continual improvement process. So for ASCs, that means annual surveys that support year-round readiness, not last-minute scrambling. And then surveyors who understand operations, not just regulations. And then we've also talked about ISO 9001. It is one of the things that sets us apart. But our process is an integrated approach between the CMS conditions for coverage and the ISO 9001 quality management principles. And I think the ISO 9001 is especially valuable in ASCs because it helps reduce variability. It strengthens documentation, and it ensures that what's written in policy actually matches what's happening in practice. Because we do, that's one of the gaps that we see often is you say that you will do one thing, but you actually do another thing. The ISO 9001 process helps to manage that gap in between putting it in a policy and actually implementing the policy.
And I think you bring up a really good point there because we do see that a lot. And sometimes it's, could be that there was a large turnover of staff and, as each person's being trained, something's dropping off, from the process, or it could be that the policies have not been addressed in some time or a new piece of equipment. So I always, recommend when someone says to me, oh, we don't have anything to study, or hey, everything is going, really well. We don't know really what to focus in on from our quality improvement, and I say, pick a policy, any policy, a clinical policy, and observe. Is your team following your your policies, and if not, why? Is it a retraining that's needed, or is it a policy that's needed? So it sounds to me like having that ISO 9001 will kind of help minimize that gap between policy and what the clinical team is actually performing and doing. So I know that's a big deal. I know that you can basically walk into right now and this is nothing negative, but I mean, it's just the matter of, trying to follow, all of the CMS regulations, trying to follow, 200 plus, standards, trying to follow your state regulations. So, it's a lot on an administrator's plate for ensuring that the team's meeting all of these. So really interested to learn more about how this weaves into how you approach your standards and things like that. And I know we didn't have that on the list of questions, but just if you could talk for a moment about about your standards or what they can expect. Is there anything that's different from how you approach your standards that compare to maybe some of the other accrediting organizations?
So I'll answer that question. As we've mentioned, our NIHO we call them NIHO standards. They're an integrated set of standards. So we integrate the conditions for coverage with the ISO principles. So that integration brings in the things that are important from a quality management system standpoint. We try not to be prescriptive. Our standards, typically, if we assess a process and you are meeting the standards, we don't expect to see it cookie cutter with what everybody else does, because we know that organizations are different, right? Centers are different. So we assess the standard from, is the practice you have in place meeting the standard? And if so, that's what we're looking for. We're not looking to see that you do it exactly the way the center across the street does it. We just want to see that you're meeting the standards. Also, another thing that we really integrate into our standards is the risk assurance and risk avoidance principles. So that may be where centers see our standards a little bit more in depth, because we have identified as an organization that if it poses a risk to especially safety, then we include it in our standards. And we do that because of our history as an organization. We are a risk assurance organization from the days of the Titanic, right? So if it affects risk, it may be included in our standards.
Well, I like that. I've been, working in risk management for decades, and I'm actually working on risk management certification. And, through my, focus in that certification process, risk really does, to your point, it touches everything. And so really having that focus on avoidance, I am learning, is paramount. We used to think of, quality management, infection control, patient safety, risk management in kind of silos. But as I'm, years of experience and these things are teaching me, is that they're really all interconnected and they need to be interconnected. So thank you for kind of talking about what someone could expect, regarding DNV's standards. So thank you. So Sam, could you tell us a little bit about how DNV's solutions support and add value to leadership responsibilities in that ASC environment?
Of course, Tina. You're just asking all those good questions today. No, I always like to look at it this way, right? So your management, they're ensuring that your ASC is reliable today, but now you have your leadership that they're ensuring that the ASC is relevant tomorrow. And we help reinforce this with our consistency. And we're coming every year. We have your annual surveys. All of our surveys are educational based, and they're guaranteeing that you're also compliant with CMS. We're continuously engaging you, and we're helping you reinforce that role clarity and support that cultural alignment that as a leader, is something that you want. You have that continuous compliance with our ISO 9001 being integrated into our standards. So our goal is to work with you, not against you. We understand that every center is different and that you're not, as Michelle mentioned, the same as the center down the street. So how can we help you not just be compliant with CMS, but how can we help you create that culture and that vision that you want to have for your center every single day?
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And so would you say during the course of the year, if questions arise, if there are anything like that, then you will also support, in other accrediting organizations, it's always been that they come in, do your survey, and then they leave, and then you don't have really any kind of conversation, though they offer, if you have a problem, please call us. But would you say that because you are coming out annually, is there more to the story? If, do they have like an account rep that they would reach out to if there were questions that come up?
Yeah. So we offer several different things for our partners, right? They're not our customers; they're our partners. They work with us. We have it's called Zendesk. They can reach out anytime and ask any type of question, and we can guarantee that it'll get sent to the right person, so that way they get the right answer. But we also have a networking channel that DNV has created but isn't a part of, that allows you to have those peer-to-peer conversations as to, what are your policies and procedures? What have you found works for you? How did you implement this? So then that way everyone can kind of, be on the same page, but at the same time get those outside the box thoughts from other locations that are successful.
Oh, great. Thank you for sharing that. And I do want to add that I recently was talking to a hospital that DNV performs their accreditation for, and I will have to concur that the team member that I was speaking to actually said, I love that they come out annually. And so I'm glad that you, addressed that here, because I know when I first heard, I was like, ooh, annually. Oh, I don't know if I would like that. But it sounds to me like it creates more of that supportive environment. So appreciate you sharing that. And is there anything else that you feel would be pertinent to kind of share with the listeners so that they have that snapshot of what DNV Healthcare will do for an ASC? And of course, we are going to share with the listeners your, web URL, and maybe if someone wants to let everyone know how best to kind of make that first call to find out about your services?
Yeah, I'm sure each one of us has a little nugget to toss out there, Tina. But
Sure.
one of our current partners said it best, and I grabbed this quote from something, and they said, "Accreditation isn't about passing a test; it's about honoring a promise. The true measure of a good day is whether we connected and elevated more than separated and diminished." And, that is something that DNV values. That is something that we are able to, help open our partners' eyes to make sure that, what they're doing on the day to day is what their vision has been from the start.
Wow, I love that quote. That's a great quote, actually. Very relevant.
That was
Um,
perfect,
actually,
Sam.
Thank you. I can actually tell you who it's from. It's from University Hospitals. I don't know if you guys saw, but they are the first health system in the United States that not only are all their hospitals accredited by DNV, they're also ISO 9001 certified, including their corporate headquarters. So they've been partnered with us for a really long time, and I thought that was a very powerful quote that I wanted to share with you guys.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I love it.
I'll add a little bit to what we were talking about annual surveys. So one of the things that leadership operationally is concerned about is cost. And organizations typically have a broad scope of people that the year before surveys start doing a lot of work to prepare for survey. And if you can reduce doing that, the cost savings for first of all are going to be noticeable. Also, you're going to be repurpose those folks' time to focus on patient care and other things that are important to the organization. And to Sam's point about university hospitals, Becker's will be releasing an article about ISO 9001 and the positive impact it's had on that system. And even though it's a hospital, that's where we started in 2008, it'll give people a good feel of what ISO does for an organization.
Oh, awesome. Please share that link when it comes out. I'm happy to share it with everyone from our end as well, because I'm definitely interested in learning more about it. I like that whole interwoven piece and how really everything interconnects with another. And if we can implement something that bolsters those processes and you can expect the same outcome every time and minimizing variances, I think that's paramount. I think that's the whole reason for meeting standards, regulations, and accreditation.
I completely agree with you there, Tina. I mean, DNV accreditation, like our healthcare division, we actually have a 95% client retention rate. And once we got in the door with ASCs, now we're having our current clients reach out to us and say, hey, ISO 9001 certified. I'm a hospital. Standardization is one of my goals. Let's combine everyone together into one. Still be an HOPD, still be your standalone, but now we can take everything and make sure we're aligned across the board. And that's really important to everyone. And that's what ISO 9001 helps do, is create that alignment across the entire organization.
May I ask a question? It just came to mind. So when you become DNV accredited, are you also ISO certified, or is that a separate certification? I'm just curious. I don't know.
So I'll take that one. It comes together. So we have annual surveys, but we accredit for a cycle, a 3-year cycle, just like the other AOs do. So we will do your initial survey, and then when we do your annual surveys in between, we will begin talking about and assessing your compliance with ISO as the cycle moves along. So when we do the reaccreditation survey, then that is when we do the ISO certification survey. Okay. So on that survey, you become ISO certified in addition to being accredited. And then that cycle just continues as you go. So we will renew. So then when you get to that next end of the next cycle, we're doing your ISO recertification when we do your NIHO reaccreditation.
Thank you. Thank
So
you.
they work alongside, same survey,
Right.
but it just progresses as you move through the cycle.
Very nice. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that information. Anything else, Michelle, that you wanted to add? Any nuggets as we wrap up our talk today?
So the only thing I wanted to say is we know, because when we came into the market, we added the ISO for hospitals. We added the ISO component because we think it's really important. I will tell you that the same feelings that ASCs are having now, because we got our deeming authority in December of last year, and the same feelings that ASCs are having with, oh, I don't know about an annual survey, and what is this ISO you're talking about? We experienced that on the hospital side as well. And I will tell you what we hear from our customers that they love most about their partnership with DNV is annual surveys and ISO 9001. So it becomes, as you get to know us and you get into your accreditation process with us, it becomes what you thought, oh, that won't work. That won't work in our ASC. It becomes what you love and appreciate about us. So I just wanted to share that because right now it seems very different and odd for the ambulatory surgical center space, but it will become what they value.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Michelle. I think we've learned a lot here today about DNV Healthcare, and at least that to pique curiosity and, certainly have ASCs that are either new and know that you're another AO that they can reach out to, or if someone's interested in, switching. So the best point of way to go to get a hold of you is to go to your website.
I think what we can do is provide you a link that you could share. That would be a way for them to directly contact us, and then depending on where they're located, we'll make sure it gets to the appropriate person.
Okay. Awesome.
Or they can also stop by our booth at ASCA. We're booth 524. So if they'd like to stop in and personally talk to Crystal or myself, you're more than welcome to. I'm an in-person person, so having that conversation is definitely something that I know myself and Crystal are more than welcome to.
We'd love to meet them at ASCA if they're there. That would be great.
Exactly.
Yes. ASCA, and your booth was 524?
Yep, 524.
So you heard it here. DNV Healthcare will be at ASCA in booth 524. Please stop by and visit them. And then also Custom Surgical will be at booth 725. We'd love to see you as well. But Michelle, Crystal, and Samantha, thank you so much for joining the Operationally Speaking podcast today. It's been lovely having you here, and we look forward to working with you and talking with you again in the near future. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Tina.